welcome back to another episode of Miraculous Thinking. I'm your host, Elenique Marie, and with me, Crystal and Compton. And today we are back to talk about Inside the Body of God, which we started. I know, right? That's a deep statement.
It is.
We started last week with sort of the introduction and going over the Abundance Manifesto, which were 13 really interesting ideas about how to really explore what it means to be abundant and declaring all the areas and ways in which you are abundant in your life. So we hope you had an opportunity to practice with those and use them. I've definitely reflected on some of them. Some were harder than others.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your experience was.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can really kind of connect with the areas inside of yourself that you have to work on a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And which is why these things are good to do, because they give us benchmarks for where we are. Because if you don't know where you are, you can't know where you're going. If you don't know where you're starting from. So I always find these very useful, like a checking in to see where am I.
Yeah, me too.
But before we get going on the discussions of chapters 1, 2, and 3 from Inside the Body of God, I just want to remind you that this is our book for this month, and we will be doing 3 chapters at a time, which should close out. Should it close out May? It'll close out May.
Yep.
And then in the month of June, we will be doing The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. So if you haven't already, make sure to get your copy of The Way of Integrity. It's a really implementable, interesting book, and I think you guys are going to really, really enjoy it. And then we're going to have our hiatus for summer to give you guys a chance to relax and enjoy the summer, and for us to do the same, reboot, reset, so we can come back fully enthusiastic in August to start with the beautiful book that Crystal suggested, What Dreams May Come. And I can't wait to read that.
Yeah. My thought about it, my memory of reading it back in like the early aughts or mid aughts was that it was just so rich and magical with imagery and inspiration. I wonder if I'll feel the same, 20 years later or whatever. I hope so too, but I'm looking forward to that for sure.
It's nice to go back to things that you've seen that had such an impact on you, like whether you read or watched it. I think I mentioned to you that a couple weeks ago, for some reason, my husband's like, have you seen the movie Jacob's Ladder? And I'm like, yeah, I remember seeing that when I was quite young, actually. And he was like, I've never seen it. And it's listed as a horror, but it's not a horror. It really isn't a horror movie.
It's kind of just a psychedelic-y.
Yeah.
It's disturbing. It can be disturbing.
It's disturbing. But I always remember when I was a little kid, a line in that movie where, I think we talked about this last week, where there's a chiropractor that's always fixing him, in the movie. And he always looks at the chiropractor and says, do you know what you look like? You look like a giant angel standing there in that light, the chiropractic light, like shining through him. And he says, yeah, you always tell me that. And he's actually in the movie kind of like an angel figure that's coming to help him with his process, his transition. I don't want to spoiler alert this. So if you're interested, check out Jacob's Ladder. But I just thought, wow, it still impressed me. And it was like 30 years later. So it was really cool to go back and see something that affected me, but how it affected me differently this time. Because I'm not the same.
Like lived some life and have some different viewpoints. I watched that in the 90s. So I've only watched it once. I remember being a little confused by it.
Totally.
And surprised at the end. And so maybe that's when I should go back and watch as well.
Definitely. Yeah. I saw What Dreams May Come, the movie, and you said it doesn't even compare to the book. So
I didn't think so at the time. And I love the movie. I think the movie's great with Robin Williams. A fantastic book. Yes. And so let's talk a little bit about where I'm going for my summer break.
Yeah, let's
versus
do it.
Where you're going. Because where are you going?
I'm going to Italy.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm
Believe it or
jealous.
not, we are going to Italy because one of my best friends in the world, Gustavo, hello, is getting married to his fiance, Nicola. So, and actually has asked me to sort of like co-officiate the wedding. So it's super exciting. We're really excited to see him and share like his special day. So we're going to go there, and then we're going to visit some of my husband's family who live in Italy. So it'll be a wonderful time over there.
Are you going to the Netherlands as well? Or
not this time? We're actually going to fly from Florida, which is rare for us. We usually go to Amsterdam and then go to Europe, but this
Got
time we're
it.
just going to go straight from Miami.
Well, I am going to Iowa. I go to Iowa every July. I make the trek to see my brother, who is
Oh,
an earth angel and
oh,
just the most lovely being on the planet for real. And he comes every Thanksgiving, and I go to him every summer, and we just stay a little while. We eat a lot of food. I get even fatter. I drink a
no.
lot of, I don't think I can drink
Mm-hmm.
like I used to drink just because it affects me so badly
Oh,
nowadays,
yeah.
but I'll probably try.
Right.
I'll give it the old
Because,
college try.
hashtag goals.
That's right. You gotta have a goal. But that's what I'm gonna be doing for my break, and then just taking it easy. And maybe my
Yeah,
husband can take some time off and we can just chill.
that would be great.
It would be nice.
Yeah. Wouldn't
Getting
it be
into the sun.
lovely?
It would be lovely, yes. As I fall asleep tonight, I will think about it.
Oh, well, that's part of what we're learning, right? So we're going to
Yes,
put
it
that into
is.
the program, into the
Yes.
matrix.
Before we get into our discussion of the first 3 chapters, I just want to remind everybody that you can always reach out to us and send an email. And you can do that by writing to miraculousthinking@gmail.com. That's miraculousthinking@gmail.com. And I think for this book in particular, because there's so many exercises and so much thinking and
A lot.
ruminating that we have to do about ourselves, that it would be super cool to hear from some of our listeners as to what you are looking at, what you are
Yes.
dealing with, what is coming up for you, because I'm going to be willing to share what's coming up for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just love to hear from y'all too. That'd be fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
write us.
Yeah. Write us. We'll talk. No big whoop.
Right.
We'll just.
Right.
Well, I think that was everything we had to say.
I think
So
so.
I think we can just jump in.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Chapter
So
1, you are a radiant magnetic being.
now, before we get into chapter 1, she prefaces chapter 1 with these incredible quotes from the Gospel of Thomas. Do you
Mhm.
want to explore that quote
Yeah,
before
I
we
think
jump into
so.
it? Because it sets sort of the tone for what we're going to be encountering in the
I think it's
chapter.
supposed to, but I'm a little
Right.
confused by some of these
Well,
quotes.
let's see
But
how we
yes,
can make it work.
yes,
You want to read it for us? Or you want
sure.
Yeah.
It says, Jesus said, "Preach from your housetops that which you will hear in your ear. For no one lights a lamp and puts it under a bushel, nor does he put it in a hidden place, but rather he sets it on a lampstand so that everyone who enters and leaves will see its light." And this is from the Gospel of Thomas.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
Well, in light of the chapter, which is you are a radiant magnetic being, I think it's putting us in touch with the idea that we all have within us light,
Mm-hmm.
love, divinity, I would say godhood, master creatorhood.
Yes.
And the reason we have incarnated is to do something with all of that. We don't hide
Yes.
it. We don't pretend it's not there. No, we live our lives looking for ways to shine it. That's what I think this means.
I
What
think
about
so
you?
too. I think so too. But I found interesting that part where it says, preach from your housetops that which you will hear in your ear.
That's the
And I'm wondering,
mysterious part.
yeah, who is talking into my ear? Is it
Mhm.
God? Is it my God self? Is it just me and my thoughts? Right. So, because their implication here is that what I'm hearing is valuable and that I'm supposed to shine it. Right. So
Yes.
I'm thinking, and for that, we need the stillness that we talked about so much. It's like, I watched this video the other night when I couldn't sleep, and it was a guy saying, how can you tell the difference between your thoughts and God's speaking to you? So if God is really speaking to you, how can you tell the difference? And it was very subtle, very subtle. But he said it's never urgent unless it's like to keep you safe from like an oncoming, train or something. But generally, it's very peaceful and soft and not pushy. It doesn't change. So it's not like today I want to start a, community for, homeless puppies. And tomorrow it's like, I want to save the whales. And, it's like whatever God is asking you to do, it's going to be consistent because God is consistent and stable. And so he gave all these ideas about how do we recognize that voice. But mostly they said, you have to be able to go into your heart, into the stillness of yourself, which is where you merge with God. That is where you and God meet. And it's actually beyond words. And what you'll have is a feeling, a sense that this is true. And when I was reading this, I thought, yeah, this is the hardest thing to do because it requires discipline
Mhm.
to want to hear the word of God as opposed to being in your thoughts. And then to allow that guidance to actually inform what you do, what you say, which a lot of times probably you won't be liked for. Because if you're listening to the word of God, it's probably not popular.
And I think we learned in our last book, The Search for Truth by Michael A. Singer, that our voice, our thoughts, that voice is actually made up of 3 different voices, which are always talking to. And so it can be a bit of a task to try and figure out what your own authentic thoughts are outside of ego, id, and superego, in addition to the voice of God. You know, in all of the teaching that I've done about this in particular, for me, when it's a divine message that's coming in, there is a different, I use the word weight or heft about it because my normal thoughts are kind of floaty. They're always just, the voice is always talking. But when it's God or my higher self or the divine, there's just a different resonance to it. It's a bit more booming. And so I don't know. And you really only get to figure out what it sounds like to you when you take that time in stillness to sort of sift through everything that's happening inside of you to find the voice and then hook into it.
Totally. That's what the gentleman, he brought that point up too. He said, some people say the voice of God sounds like rolling waters. And some people say it sounds like a gentle, soft, the voice of God is, what's that? You probably know. It's from the Bible, but the voice of God is still and
small.
Still and small. And then he said, somebody else said something. And that's exactly his point. He said, I cannot describe to you the terrain of what God will be for you, because God will be unique to you. So you have to do the work to go into the relationship and whatever. And when we say this word God, because people get very caught up on this word, but the relationship with that aspect of you that is eternal. And that is always and always was and always will be that eternal part of you. And that is the hardest thing to do, I have found, to be consistent with a relationship with that aspect of myself. Like, you have to meditate and you come up with a million reasons why you don't have time. You have to pray, or that it's recommendable to pray, because if you don't talk to your friend, you don't have an intimate relationship with your friend, right?
Right.
And yet it's only when things are falling apart or when you're rushing it in, 10 minutes before bed, and then you actually pat yourself on the back for this robotic prayer that you've been saying. It's sad, and then when you do take the time, it's so beautiful.
Right.
You wonder why you didn't do it. But of course, I think it's the ego and all the other voices in your head.
Yes. And that's actually one of the things that I put down when we're doing the exercises, like something that I want to enhance is my discipline around my practice, like doing the things I know I need to do in order to continue to hear that voice in a dynamic way that I cannot miss. I always add that on, because I think God is always talking to us and spirit is always talking to us. But if we're living really reactive lives, it's hard to hear it because we're doing and thinking all of these other things. So when you talk to me, make sure I can hear it.
Yes.
Please speak loud. Use a megaphone.
Lovely.
I need it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really interesting quote for her to pick to start the chapter, but I thought it was relevant because in the next one, she's trying to lay the foundation for the fact of, who are you really? Who are you?
Right.
And her answer is, you're a radiant magnetic being.
Yes.
So what stood out for you in this chapter? I felt like for me, it was a lot of what we've talked about already so many times. And all
I
the
think,
books.
honestly, Elenique, this is what we're going to find in every spiritual book that we look into. Like, these principles, these core truths around God and spirit are pretty immutable. Well, you can't be pretty immutable. It's immutable. They are the same. And so we're just going to have different books that are probably talking about the same thing. And I was telling Elenique before we started recording that in reading this book, I feel like I'm reading something I would have written myself. And she's talking about topics and using turns of phrase that I use all the time. So it's very familiar to me. So I'm not going to say this is groundbreaking, but it is absolutely essential to always have this in front of you, always be consuming this truth about who it is that we are, because in this reality, it is easy to lose your way. So this first chapter is about creating and how we do this and why we create the way that we do. and the idea of being magnetic and accepting that you are always drawing to you something. Now, the
Yes.
quality of the something is on you. As Goddard talks about, the things that are showing up in your life, this is the effect, not the cause of how you feel about yourself. How you feel about yourself is the cause of the effect. You are always drawing it to you. And she uses some discussion on neural pathways and things of that nature to kind of understand how we are habituated
Hmm.
and entrained from a very early age to be magnetic in a certain way. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, yes. I mean, just as a refresher, because I know we've talked about this so many times with our audience, but it's the idea that the mind, in order to make things easier for us as human beings, likes to create patterns. It likes to create shortcuts. And so when you create a shortcut, so for example, when you wake up in the morning, most of us don't have to think about how we take a shower, how we brush our teeth, and in what order we do that. It just goes automatic. Like I get up, I brush my teeth, I take a shower, like I come back, I do everything goes the same way every day. And that's what makes it efficient. If I had to think about how to do that every single morning, it would be really hard. It would be like relearning everything all the time. So, in order to make us be able to function in this world, we create these neural pathways, shortcuts. The problem is that once they're really entrained, they become so automatic that you're not even aware anymore. So, there's really not a lot of choice or will. You're just kind of programmed. And where that works for you, that's useful. And where it doesn't, it creates a humongous barrier to change. Also, especially if you're asleep to the fact that you're programmed, which most of us are in many, many ways. And I think that's why she created this book where we are having to look at in the exercises, what are those beliefs that we hold that we don't even question?
Mm-hmm.
Because as we saw last week, was it last week or the week before, where we talked about the fact that by the age of 6 years old,
Yeah.
you're already pretty much programmed.
Well, and what she says in this book is that that entrainment starts 6 months before you're even born. So these are the beliefs and the patterns of your mom,
Yep.
influenced by the beliefs and the patterns of her mom, and so on.
Exactly. And something I found confusing a little bit in this idea of us being um, the architects of our own, that we create through our vibration, that
Yeah.
which we attract. But there is talk that she explores about DNA and the
Yes.
blueprint, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, if there's a pattern in the DNA for certain things like disease,
Mm-hmm.
then how much of a role is your thinking having on the expression of that disease? Because I know that Bruce Lipton, he says,
Mm-hmm.
the epigenetics that you can, through your energy, you can either make that blueprint dormant or active, depending on what you're thinking. But for me, that was a big sticking point, because I'm like, okay, what if I'm thinking whatever these great thoughts are, yet at the same time, I'm still manifesting sickness, right? And they can go and they can show you, well, your DNA has this problem. It's kind of hard because you don't know how much power do I truly have to change what is in the DNA.
Right. And here we get back to the subsignals, plural. Like there is the subsignal of what's in your subconscious, which is tethered to the timeline we're presently in this life. But then there's the subsignal from the epigenetics, from the ancestral line, from your mother and your
Mhm.
mother's mother, that is fixed in terms of, and I look at it in terms of predestination versus full free will.
Yes.
Um, in theology and doctrine, there's an argument about whether everything has been predestined or whether this is truly a free will universe. And I tend to think it's a blending of the both. You are
Mhm.
born with a predisposition, but ultimately your free will is what molds your path in this life. But yes, if you come in with a genetic disorder, physically, just physically, then maybe it appears, maybe it doesn't, maybe it's just a predisposition, maybe it isn't. When it does emerge, there's treatments for it, though. Is there a way to live with it? Is there a way to cure it once it comes online? Yeah, these are, some
Like
things are
children
harder
that are
than
born
others.
handicapped, I'm
Yes.
thinking, or
Mm-hmm.
blind,
Yeah.
where, that's it. Or mentally handicapped because of so many reasons that a child can come in like that.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't really know what their vibration had to do. So what are we doing? We're thinking about the vibration of the mother and her fears about the baby and how that affected the blueprint,
Mhm.
because a lot of moms are very afraid when they're pregnant. And so if
Sure.
you're vibrating all this fear about, is the baby going to be healthy? Is the baby going to be healthy? Maybe you're so caught up in it. And then, so is that the argument, because I feel like you said,
Mhm.
there's a difficulty in establishing how much of this, and there we go with karma,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
How much of my karma can I change just through my vibration? How much of a creator am I? Or does this creator, even though he's a hologram of God, or she is a hologram of God, have to live? And I think she mentions that in one of the chapters. If you're evil, if you do horrible things, this is a universe that will give it back to you. So I think there has to be I think people beat themselves up a lot when their life isn't showing up like they wish, or terrible things are happening, and they're going to themselves, but I've been working so much on my mindset, and I've been, but it still doesn't work. Maybe there's things that you just can't change. You
Mhm.
can change how you respond, but you can't change the
Yes.
things that are happening.
Mhm.
So this is what kind of sometimes I find a slippery slope when we talk about the power of attraction and the
Right.
law of attraction. It dismisses some things that don't seem to add up for me.
Well, and we're approaching it from the perspective of a human being in this incarnation.
Mm-hmm.
I believe personally that the soul makes the decision for the prototype, like how you're coming in, the type of parents you have. If you're going to be born blind, the soul is seeking to experience itself in a very specific way, and so adds conditions, experiences people to the blueprint so that it can do it. But we just don't necessarily understand the lesson as we are living it, and we say to ourselves, well, why was I born this way? Why was my child born this way? Why did this
Mm-hmm.
happen? Because we're not really looking at it from that higher vantage point of the soul. And I believe if we come in with what some would say are deficiencies, and I don't actually think so, we have an opportunity to be of, first of all, learn at an advanced and accelerated level, and possibly to serve at a really high level in ways that as just a regular human being we don't recognize. For example, children with Down syndrome, most of which I believe are inherently high vibrational, just came here to be with us and change the frequency of the
Yeah.
planet. And then we would say they're deficient in some way, or we would say they have a problem or an issue, but they actually came here to serve at that high level.
Yes. It's always such a hard thing because, like we talked about, the challenge has the gift, right? The dark side, or the shadow. Yeah, the shadow has the gift. But, it's not easy to live with a shadow. It's
Mm.
not that easy to transform it into a gift. And there's that process, like you said, in the very humanness of us, because we're still very much identified as being human beings, where you're having to deal with so much suffering, so many people. Sometimes I sit at night and I just just think about the times I was in hospital with my son, when he was sick, and the amount of parents and the helplessness, just this despair, and then the surrendering. And even though you do it, and even though you do it because you have nothing left to do, it's so difficult to be a
Mm-hmm.
human, especially when you don't have that automatic connection, or that one that we're looking for, where we know, oh wait, that's God talking to me, that's not just me wishful
Right.
thinking stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just hold space for everybody that's listening to this, because it's not easy. And I
Mm-mm.
think that's the thing, that sometimes people make it sound easy, but it's not.
No, it is not. And I think that we came here knowing that it wasn't going to be
Yeah.
easy and preferring that it would not be easy. So, for
Yes,
whatever
and I'd like
reason,
to talk to whoever that
yeah,
was.
thank you. Can we have a sit
Just be
down
like,
meeting?
revision on the plan.
This is what we wanted,
Yeah.
and that is why we came. Do you want to talk about the exercises in
Yeah,
this one?
briefly. I think that these were some of the best exercises,
I
chapter
think
1,
so
I
as
found.
well.
Yeah.
Yes. So when we get to the exercises in chapter 1, she asks us off the top of our head to write down the top 10 reasons why we don't have everything we desire in our life right now. And she asks us to notice how much time, attention, and focus we place on these reasons. Do you want to share a little bit about what you got?
Well, I started with, and it was very generic because I didn't realize that we needed to be so specific, but I
Yeah.
started with limiting beliefs.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure that all these ideas of what I can and can't do and can and cannot have are driving so much of it. I put fear as the second one. Just
Hmm.
fear about the future, fear about the past, you know. Lack of clarity. So really this sense of being overwhelmed and
Mm-hmm.
not really knowing, what do I want? Do I really want it? And why do I want it? And who wants it? Is it that super conscious? Is it, conscious? Is it ego?
Right.
Is it who's talking here? So those were my three main things that I think are difficult to handle on the
You
day to
only had
day.
3 out of 10?
I did. I stopped at that because I was like, crazy thoughts, fear, and limiting beliefs. That covers
It
everything.
feels like that's enough, yeah.
Yeah.
My first one was weight and body image. And that was really interesting to write down. It was the first thing that popped into my head, and I wanted to talk myself out of it because, come
Mhm.
on, really?
Yeah.
But it was the first thing, and I wrote it down as one of the top 10 reasons I don't have everything I desire. So I have some meditation to do around this because it
Yeah.
was so clear and so fast. I'm like, whoa, the connection between my image of my body and my happiness in life. The
Mhm.
next was health and my concept of health. I felt health, but I'm relatively healthy, but my concept of my health is what I think holds me back
Right.
from having true, vibrant, energetic health. Laziness. I'm such a Taurus. Oh my God, as soon as I sit down on my couch, I'm just so comfy. I don't want to go
You're like,
anywhere.
no.
I'm happy right here. I started Downton Abbey, sidebar.
Okay. Let's do it.
And I love it.
Me too.
And I was up until 3 a.m. last night watching it.
Binging it.
Well, I started with the first season because I haven't watched it. And I'm just like, oh my God. See, I could sit all day. I
Oh,
could
yeah.
have my 2 or 3 meals a day just sitting, watching, and binging on a show and being very comfy. That's my nature. And I think it keeps me from doing all of the things I really want to do in my life. And also, I think it's a family curse. My brother actually called this out a few years ago. He's like, the Milligans, that's my family name, were lazy people. And it
Oh,
passed down through my father. My dad was a lazy person. His dad wasn't a lazy person. He was a congressman and a businessman, but his mother was a lazy woman. And
okay.
he's like, and look at my kids, Crystal, like we got some laziness in my kids and in my
Oh
own
my
children, my
gosh.
own.
That's hilarious.
So I just feel like I want to be more productive, but at the same time, I feel like the banner of not doing enough is also really problematic because I think I have done a lot.
I
I've
mean,
done
I
a
was going
lot.
to say, I don't consider you to be lazy in any stretch of the imagination. And the sheer amount of stuff that you produce and do, and that
Yeah.
you could even think of yourself in those terms is pretty surprising. So I don't know what it is that you think that you're not doing.
It's when I have downtime, I think I feel very guilty about
But
it.
that's what I'm saying. There's
Right.
this guilt. Like when I
Yes.
haven't felt well, that I haven't been able to do what I normally do, I am in a state of guilt like nobody's business. Like
Yeah. And it's
I
so
feel
unfair
bad.
to us.
Yeah. But I think that's a program, because we got programmed really in my family, like laziness is just not tolerated. Like you should be industrious and doing things
Hmm.
constantly.
Yeah, that
It's
was
not
not
like a
it.
family that hung out and played
Oh
board
gosh,
games,
that was us. We were in Hawaii. We were just at the beach, honey. We were just
How
like we were
lovely.
barbecuing. Like those were like the ideals of our lives. It was just when we could relax. And so I think we celebrated that a lot. And
Yeah.
some of us got stuck there quite a bit.
But there's nothing wrong with that. This world is too much. This world and the urge to do and to validate and quantify your value based on your output,
Oh yeah.
as if you have to earn it all the time.
Yeah. So again, some of the top 10 reasons why you don't have everything you desire, just to run through them. Motivation, which ties into laziness. Lack of routine, which is this
Mm.
is something I really want to shift, is my lack of routine, which ties
Mhm.
into laziness, which ties into
Mhm.
motivation. My certainty of path. Like,
Oh, yeah.
what am I supposed to do now, God?
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, I'm here to put all of my energy into it, but I honestly don't know what that is. I'm
Hello.
just currently moving in the direction of like, this is what I can do and this is what I want to do, but I don't know where I'm going. I got to
And it's
figure that out.
overwhelming when you can't know where you're going because it's like you waste so much energy
Yes,
on so many projects.
that don't work for you, which is why
Yes,
human design is so powerful, knowing
it
your
is.
type.
Yep.
Like, do you have to be invited? Do you have to wait a
Mhm.
moon cycle to make a
Yeah,
decision? Do you just have to check your gut and respond? Like, that's
exactly.
so important. And then discipline. which is routine. Like it's all the same thing, honey,
So
to me.
undercurrent.
Yeah. Yes, yes.
What do you think is be the one thing that would change all that? Like if you could change one of the things on that list, that would then
Body image. Body image. That was the revelation for me
wow.
because you would think that these other things are maybe a bit more important, but that is the importance of the body. And it has always been this way for me. When I am
Mm-hmm.
feeling really good about myself, when I'm feeling sexy, when I'm feeling healthy, vibrant, energetic, honestly, when I'm feeling like I look good, I am way more creative. I am way more energetic to do things. I am way
Yeah.
more motivated to put into place systems that help me to thrive, think of new ideas. But when I am not, all I want to do is watch Downton Abbey,
Mm-hmm.
have a glass of wine and my cheese,
Mm-hmm.
and just sit here forever. So
Yeah.
my entire success on the planet is tied to how I feel about my body.
Right.
Yikes. I've got to fix that, is what I've come to know
Yeah.
since writing this
I
down.
share that one. I mean, I think I wrote it somewhere else. I wrote it somewhere, like relationship to self and self-perception. And I think that's what I put under the limiting beliefs category. Because that's a limiting belief, right? That number one, I have to look a certain way. I have to weigh a certain weight, in order for me to feel beautiful and feel sexy and this and that. When in reality, you can have that feeling no matter what weight you are if you want it.
Mhm,
Like if you really want it, and I've seen millions of women, and the internet's full of it, right? And they think they're the most beautiful people in the world, and they should.
mhm.
They should. And so this
But are you saying they're objectively not?
No, I'm saying
Okay.
that we all have our own criteria for what
Mm,
beauty is. Like, for example, when I watch Downton Abbey, like I want to be a rail thin woman with a size 00
I
nightgown for
know.
a dress. Like,
I
yes,
know.
thank you. I love it. And I'm a Latin woman with big hips and a big butt. And so, yeah, that's pretty much like self torture. Like,
Mhm,
I'd have to weigh 80 pounds to be able to look like her because my body's just not built like that. But I grew up reading the romantics and watching all these English movies. So for me, this beauty standard
mhm.
really was that. And I know, and I can see other people that are completely different from that standard, and I can see the beauty in them, but not when I see it in myself. When I see it in myself, there's this aspiration too. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that. Like,
Right?
I'd be
I think
lying.
so many of us women have to deal with this, and I've said it a million times, but I thought when I was this age, I wouldn't have to be dealing with this anymore. And I'm like,
Yeah,
why am I, well, God, I just turned 55. Why am I 55 and still thinking about this horseshit?
I know,
Because it's
right?
not horseshit. But like, look at my timeline, Elenique. Like, my timeline is filled with plastic surgery, body modification, eating disorders, um, all that I could connect back to a single experience I had with my father when I was 13
Wow.
years old, and a comment that he made and an inappropriate thing that he did. Like, I can tie all of this back to that one moment. And for the rest of my life, I've been subjected to this abuse of myself and this misperception of myself. Because when I met you, for example, in person, I'm like, this is the most gorgeous person I have ever seen in my entire life. And I'm sure
That's
when
why
you met
you're my
me,
friend.
you thought that too. No,
I
I'm joking.
did.
No, I'm
I
sure when you met,
did.
but
I did.
I'm sure when you met me, you weren't thinking of all the things that like I could do better with my body and my looks and
No.
anything. Like this is the
I
self-imposed
tell you about that
torture.
picture you had on your website. I don't know if it's still on there, but when I first joined the Light Shine Lab, or which was called the Light Workers Lab back in the day,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember you had some pictures. I think it was like a Mexican-y kind of black blouse or something. I don't know. It
Mm-hmm.
was like a little bit, it was beautiful. And you had these
Oh
earrings,
yes.
this
Out
very
by a tree. By
boho,
a tree.
yes.
Yes.
And the
Mm-hmm.
sun was shining, and
Hmm.
I remember thinking, like, this woman is so magical, magical. And that's the truth. And if you had just looked like a, whatever, I would just not tell you because I'm not going to tell you it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
But that was true and is true. And so I think that that's the saddest part of this entire debacle, that anybody else can look at you and see something.
Mm-hmm.
And the program is so embedded that that's not true. That no matter how many people you hear it from, you just find ways. Oh, you only saying that because you're my friend. You're only saying that because you're
Right.
my partner. You're only
Right.
saying that because you're my mom or whatever.
Do you do that with your husband? I do
All the
this with my
time.
husband all the time.
All the time.
Every day he tells me he loves me and that I'm beautiful, and beautiful in a specific way. You're
Yeah.
beautiful today because look at what you're wearing, or you're beautiful today
Yeah.
because look at what you're doing.
It's so sweet.
And I immediately like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
I
Because
roll.
in particular, I've got my hair up in a bun. I'm wearing my pajamas still. Like you
Yeah.
can't possibly think that, but I do that to my husband all the time.
And my grandma used to get so pissed off at me because I used to have this habit where if anybody told me they like what I was wearing, I'd be like, "Oh, this whole thing? Well, I got it at Marshall's. I paid $19.99." You're like, my grandma's like,
Where
"Why do you
is
have to tell everybody
right?
where you got it?" And like, why can't you just take the compliment? Why can't you just say thank you
Mm-hmm.
and accept that the gift of someone complimenting you? You look
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. It made me uncomfortable. It
Yeah.
literally terrified me to receive a compliment. It made me feel like I did not know what to do with myself. And I had to create like 3 or 4 different diversions or start talking like a nutball because
So
I got
why?
so
I mean, so if I'm telling you the same story that I'm doing that, would you have a perspective as to why I would need to do that? Why am I
I think
uncomfortable?
because it felt so untrue. And it's almost like it's such a shock that someone would say that you just go into this overdrive of trying to like, I don't even know. It's like embarrassment. It's almost embarrassment because I feel like somebody's telling me something that I can't see. And it's gotten better as I've gotten older and I've worked with it. But like, especially when I was a teenager and a young woman in my 20s, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
My
So
grandma's like, can't you just say thank you?
yeah.
Why do you have to do this weird thing that you do? So I think it's tied to that,
So
tied to the lack of belief.
let me run something by you. I know I don't want to take up too much time. We have 2 more chapters to go, but I have this idea in my head because my schedule just opened up. I'm not doing interviews anymore. I'm not doing some production that I was doing for some projects. I've got like a month. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what are the 3 things you'd like to add to a routine? Like every day, I want to work out at least 30 minutes, 45 would be great. Every day, I want to eat a smoothie with all the right things in it and give myself what every day I want to go to bed at 10 o'clock, wake up at 6 or 7. I'm thinking about just taking 1 month to establish some new routines to take care of myself, maybe help me lose a little weight. Maybe I shouldn't attach it to that though, because that's so disordered for me. But as I'm planning this out, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, is my husband going to be okay with that? That I'm taking a whole month just to take care of myself? Oh my God, what about all the other things that I could be creating, that I could be doing and generating, that's more valuable than me taking care of myself? Do you think that it's super selfish that I would take 30 days just to make sure I drink a smoothie, eat a salad, and go for a walk? Go
Does
for
that
a
do? I
walk.
mean, I think you answered your own question even as you pose it, just the insanity of the belief. Like, I haven't been feeling well. So I haven't been able to work like I normally do. And my husband's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, I feel so bad because I need to be productive. He's like, take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just focus on being well. So these are external things. Again, I think they're based on having to prove worth over and over. Like you have to prove worth over and over. Like, oh no, I'm good. It's good. I'm working and I'm cooking and I'm doing, and so I've earned love, right? Because love cannot just be given because of because you are enough, whether or not you ever do one more thing again in your life. And granted, there's things that we need to do, especially, if you are working together for finances in a couple, you know, but at the same time, what is this price? Like, when is it enough? Like, how much money is enough? How much security is enough? And what do we sell for that security and that money and that whatever? And then for what? Because
Yeah.
we're all going to end up old as
Right.
balls,
Right.
excuse me,
If we're lucky,
if
yes.
we're
Yes.
lucky,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully healthy, but you never know. And, then you're going to be there thinking, why did I do this? So that I
Mm-hmm.
could be in an apartment watching television. I mean, then you'll be able to watch Downton Abbey. You won't feel bad. That's what the highlights.
I can't wait.
Ooh, can't wait to 77,
Right.
but I don't know, Crystal. I feel like there's a lot of thinking that needs to be
Yeah.
shifted. And I share all of your same sticky points, if we want to call them that. And
Yeah.
we have to unstick ourselves from those.
We need to be tapping,
Yeah.
tapping.
Even though.
Even though, that's right. There's a lot of even though I've got.
Oh, Lord.
Oh gosh. Okay. Why don't we move on to the next chapter?
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Chapter 2. So you want to
So
look at the verse that
yeah, why don't you read it?
Okay.
Because this one I'm like, I'd like to hear you read it so I can think about it.
All right, think about it. Jesus said, "If they say to you, 'Where do you come from?' say to them, 'We came from the light, the place where the light came into being on its own accord, and established itself and became manifest through their image. If they say to you, 'Is it you?' say, 'We are its children. We are the elect of the living Father.' If they ask you, 'What is the sign of your Father in you?' say to them, 'It is movement and repose.'" The Gospel of Thomas. I know.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Okay. Okay. What's going on? Okay.
And why did she pick it?
For the introduction to abundance is your birthright and your natural state.
Okay.
So I think she's saying, well, I find it tricky for as the intro to that chapter. Only the fact that it's saying that abundance is your birthright because you are a child of God. And so if that's the purpose of putting that quote there, then I suppose it's as good as any other.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I love that it says that we came from the light, the place where the light came into being on its own accord.
That's the first thing I'd like to parse out with you.
Yeah.
The light came into
being of its own accord. So from unmanifest to manifest, right? Because light is a manifestation from the void.
Based on its own decision to do so.
Right. So God decided to create, express, shine. And so the light came from that. And established itself and became manifest through their image. And there it is again, that plural there that I'm always wondering about, that everybody ignores in the Bible as if it's not there.
I'm always talking about it.
It's like, who is this they?
Let us make man in our image. Like, okay,
Yeah.
who was with you when you're doing this?
Exactly. I've always wondered that. And when you go to church and stuff, they just
gloss right over it.
Yeah, I forget about it. No, it was just God. He was just hanging out. He likes plurals. So, and became manifest through their image. If they say to you, "Is it you?" we say, "We are its children. We are the elect of the living Father." And then if they ask you, "What is the sign of your Father in you?" say to them, "It is movement and repose," which I guess means vibration. Right? Because life is movement and rest and cycles of beginning and ending, which is a beautiful way to describe. Like, if you're alive, that's the proof that God made you.
Right.
That's nice.
I think that's as good a definition as we could probably get to today.
Agreed.
But okay, that makes sense. And that is beautiful. It seems a little overly complicated, but and that's the reason I want to kind of meditate on it, because you and I were talking about maybe doing a course around the Gospel of Thomas. And so, of course, we have the Gospel of Thomas, and I read and I meditate upon them, and these quotes strike me as incantations, not the right word, because there's a weird stigma to that, but activations.
Yes.
Like really multidimensional, many-layered words arranged specifically to activate something inside of you.
Yes.
So I just feel like sitting and working with this is going to shift my perspective a little bit.
I agree. I think it is like an activation, and also very esoteric, and like kind of with the Kabbalion, that you will hear, those who have ears will hear,
Right.
And so, but what did you think of this chapter, abundance? I mean, again, we're talking about the fact that your thoughts and feelings create a vibration, and your vibration determines the experiences that you attract, right? And she builds the case for the fact that we've heard many, many times that we are infinite light beings, that we are products of God, and that we are a hologram of God. And as such, then are unlimited in abundance, right? Because if you are a hologram, meaning, and she breaks down that word hologram. I think I wrote it down here, which I thought was interesting because I had never really broken that word down.
Greek holos, which means whole, and
Yes.
gramma, meaning message. So whole
Yes.
message.
Whole message. So
Mhm.
you are the message or the word of
Logos.
God, right?
Yep.
Logos. So what we are is the word of God, the vibration of God expressing as. So if that is all that you are, you're just an atom that's mostly just empty with energy, you're just energy, then what could you not have? And she builds this case about, well, we really, we get told, oh, we're children of God, and so we think we're these helpless, hopeless little babies that are going to make mistakes, and God's going to like laugh, and every 10 years he's going to come and smite somebody down when you went too far. It's almost like you have no power.
Mhm.
And she makes this case, if genetically we come from our parents and our parents come from their parents, and if we trace it all the way back, we go back to God, then genetically you are made of the same stuff as God. And if so, then what could be limited to you?
Mhm.
Which I agree.
I
But
agree with
it's
that as well.
hard to connect with sometimes.
Well, I mean, I use the term spiritual DNA all the time. I believe in a divine lineage, and I believe I come from God. I believe I was created in the image of God. Therefore, inherently, I have the energy of God inside of me, and I came here to do God stuff with my God spark. That's my mission. That is
love
my
it.
mission. So that's kind of, and I believe that contained within me is the, I mean, the Kabbalion taught us this as well. Contained within me
Yep.
is the all, because I'm part of
Is
the
the
all,
all.
and the all is
I'm
in me.
in the all. I'm in the
That's
mind of the all.
Yes.
And everything is mind,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Everything is mind.
Yes.
So I find that a lot of, and again, you said this earlier today, that the book that we've learned the most from, and it was our hardest book, was the Kabbalion.
Yes.
Because it has delved and explained in such detail the workings of how these ideas that a lot of people quote, but they explain, how is this true?
Mhm.
Why? That gave me a lot of foundation for having more faith in it, because I could
Yes.
understand it better. So I think in this chapter, much like we've covered in many other books, there's just this idea of vibration, and that if you are whatever you're vibrating as, you're a match for. And so not only are you attracting things to you, but you're magnetizing it through the signal that you're sending out.
Yes. She says here, we are not here to suffer. It is easy to get lost and confused in the duality of the earth experience. We begin to identify with our perceived bad experiences, and even our language reflects this. We are sad. We are depressed. The difficulty of our earth experiences causes us to sometimes identify and become the experience instead of allowing the experience to flow through us.
Agreed.
Misidentification and attachment,
Totally.
the root of all suffering.
Nope. So I thought that was, but you put it in very nice language that was easy to comprehend. So I
Yes.
appreciated that.
Yes.
And she had some questions there. I don't know if you did. Did you go over the questions after that one?
I did do some of the exercises. Yes. The first question was, when you think of being abundant without limitations, how do you feel, and what thoughts, emotions, and images come up for you? So I wrote down some keywords for that. I don't know. I probably need to spend a little bit more time, because ultimately abundance for me is freedom.
Right.
It's freedom to be divine, to be creative, to be productive, to be curious, to watch Downton Abbey whenever I want to. Thank you.
That's my dream.
And Sanditon, because that's next.
Oh, I finished Sanditon. Did you finish Sanditon?
No, I haven't, because
I
you
won't
told me a
ruin it
little
for
bit of
you.
what
I won't
happens in the
ruin it
first
for you.
season. I was like bummed a little bit about that.
No, but you have to watch it. It's
Okay.
good.
I'll get to it. I will do it. But like, just freedom to fully be. That's
know.
abundance. That's not about money. It's not
Yeah.
about anything.
Yeah. I put there, for me, when they asked, what do you, when you think of being abundant without limitations, how do you feel? And I was like, doubtful.
Wow.
Elenique,
Elenique, we got to work on that.
I know. I was like, because I feel like when I read that, I was like,
wow.
Yeah. I was like, because I was like, okay, without limitations, like when you think that you are truly abundant and without limitation, I was like, in what world?
Hmm.
Like, in what world Am I just without limitation? And of course, maybe you can claim that. But my innate response was like, too good to be true, like eye roll. That was and I wrote it there and I drew little eyes.
Like,
Like I was like,
whoop.
okay, got to work on
Yeah,
that.
there's an area here.
And the second thing I found was that I felt like my heart compressed. Like, when you're scared of something or like you have this, it said, how do these thoughts, emotions, and images influence your current experience? No, not that one. But just what comes up for you, what emotions and images. I felt like fearful, like, can you truly believe this? And then what happens if you do believe it and then you can't experience it? Like, if you really were that free, could you really be that free? Or how bad or terrible would it be to truly believe that you could be and go
never be.
chasing that and then have it not happen and just feel like every time you're falling? And I put that down there.
That's interesting. That
Because
ensures that
because of
you
previous failures, right? Like previous failures or
Mhm.
previous times that you've believed in something wholeheartedly with your full faith, and then it comes crashing down and you're like, oh my God, are you serious right now? And then you got to pick yourself up, got to get your robot. What is that thing that collects, that Zumba?
The Roomba?
The Roomba, and just like pick yourself up and glue yourself back together and start over. So I was really shocked by how much resistance there was there
Yeah.
to this idea of being limitless.
Yeah. That may be part of your logical mind as well,
Yeah.
understanding the trappings and inherent limitations of incarnation.
Yeah.
Right? So it may be a sign that you are aligning more or identifying more with that part of yourself.
Yes.
I mean, if you put that into a box of abundance in 3D, maybe that helps you to come up with something different. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, as a soul, you're resenting that you came here a little bit. Why?
Really? Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's always a love-hate thing, life. Life can be very love-hate. And like most relationships that you have in this world, it's like, where's that line? And I remember the Kabbalion when it said, the line between love and hate is just a pendulum. It's all the same thing. It's just
Right.
one emotion and you're in two extremes. And I feel like life can be like that. There's moments when you just feel like everything's coming my way and I'm just happy and I'm flowing and I'm connected. But like a pendulum, it flows the other way. And when you're there, you can have a lot of despair and question, like, was that even real? Or is this real? Or is this constant change what's real? And then that brings fear, right?
Yes, I think the goal is to detach from identifying with either polarity.
Yeah.
It's not what you are, it's happening to you. Those are two different things. It's like the storm or the clouds passing over the sky. You are not the storm, you're the sky.
Right.
And the more we identify with the disturbance or the more we identify with the thing, the longer it takes to pass over our sky.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's true. And yet it's so challenging to stay clear in the middle of like when you're in an airplane. The other day we were in turbulence and I was like, my being scared is not going to change the turbulence.
It's not
So
going to
just
change
relax.
the outcome. Yep.
No, right? And so, but when you're shaking around in there like jelly beans, you're like, okay, but I'm still worried about this right now, So I think, like you said, mind training, and being disciplined about training your mind.
I think there's a reason that by the time you're ready to go, you're really ready to go. I remember my husband's grandfather. I didn't know him for very long before he passed, but when I would ask him how he's doing, he'd say, "I'm just waiting for the bus." I'm just like, huh? He's like, I'm waiting to go. That bus is taking a long time. Like he wanted to leave for years before he actually did. I think these endless cycles and pendulum swings and all of the lessons, like by the time we're leaving, we're ready to go.
And if you're a light being and if you're energy traveling at the speed of light or faster, God only knows, it can feel claustrophobic to be in a human body, I would imagine, right? There comes a moment where you're like, okay, thanks for the lessons,
Yeah.
But I was telling my husband today about babies and the frustration of babies, right? Like when you're 2, 3, like when I had this thing with my neck and I couldn't find a place to be on the bed that didn't hurt. And I was like, now imagine if I was a baby and I was uncomfortable and I'm lying in this bed and they put me on my back because you can't sleep on your belly because of SIDS or whatever the hell it is. So you're stuck sleeping on your back. And now you start to cry, but people think you're just being naughty or annoying or spoiled. And so they don't come pick you up. Can you imagine the frustrations
Yeah.
of a soul in the body of a baby? And the
Mhm.
soul's going, what is this? Then you want to walk, but you can't.
Right.
It's so it must be such I think normally people see babies and like, oh, babies are so peaceful. I bet babies are pissed. That's why they cry. They cry because they're upset.
I've wondered about that. I've wondered if babies have the full realization of the soul self, because I think that they can't. I
No.
think that the soul would just be so unhappy being fully sentient and present in their
Oh,
soul identity and in the
oh my
form of a
God.
baby who can't even lift his head or
Yes,
say anything. It's jibba jabba.
it is.
So, I mean, we must have to do some sort of dance where the soul consciousness is displaced a little bit so
I
you can just be,
guess.
I don't know, in the trance of babyhood. It's just all a
The
trance.
baby trance. Oh my God.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Let's get into chapter
Chapter
3.
3. So
Um,
you want to read that quote from
sure,
Jesus?
sure. Jesus said, if you bring forth if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you.
Yep.
Wow.
That's hardcore.
So I was telling you earlier, I liken this to the scripture that reads, to him that hath, more is given, and to him that hath not, more is taken away, which is a manifestation scripture. I mean, if you believe and if you have the identity of I am and I am already that, then more is given to you at that level. But if your inner identity is I am not, I have not, then more is taken away. You're just in a perpetual cycle of creating what you don't want for yourself. And that's what this quote kind of feels like to me. What do you think?
For me, this was really about everyone came here with a purpose. And if you don't fulfill that purpose, if you're not authentically yourself and really, if you allow yourself to just be pushed into a mold by expectations or by the programming that we've talked about in human design so much, the conditioning, where you hide that very special particular light that is you, that most people probably won't even understand. If you bring it forth, it will save you. It will liberate you. You will be like a master of your own life through just stepping into yourself and owning you. If you don't bring it forth, it will kill you because you're using all your life force to suppress that which was put in you by God to shine in the world. That's how I read that.
I like that a lot better.
Okay.
I think that fits. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. It's beautiful. Chapter 3, you attract everything you desire with effortlessness and ease. One of the passages here that I thought was quintessential reads, your ability to create is inherent within you. Our experiences on earth sometimes make it difficult to remember how powerful and creative you really are. In Judaism, it is said that all babies, which you just brought up, prior to birth, know the word of God. At birth, God gently thumps the baby on the philtrum, which is the dent on the upper lip, and the baby forgets everything. The purpose of forgetting our divinity is to deliberately experience the adventure of reawakening and remembering the divine within us with great consciousness.
I always struggle with this part of
Let's
the
talk about it.
explanation of the
Okay.
universe, right? Like if God is all cannot be more than it already is, right? So somewhere in this chapter she talks about the
Yes.
God wants to grow and
I wrote that
evolve.
down and I put a big
You wrote
question
that
mark.
down as too.
Yes.
So I'm like, it's a contradiction.
Yep.
If the all is all is in the all, it cannot become more. We talked about that in the Kabbalion, right?
Yep.
So then that makes me wonder this whole idea of parts of the all breaking off and becoming forgetful only to re-remember. I mean, is it because you're bored? Is it because that part that broke off is bored of just being in bliss and decided it's too much I need a break so I can really appreciate the bliss. So I'm going to go down into a lower vibration, get a couple of, punches in the face. And then I'm going to come back up and be like, thank God I'm
I'm so
back.
grateful.
Okay. It's awesome.
Right.
Right. I'm wondering because I never, ever, ever understood this idea that God needed to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it.
I agree. And the actual paragraph reads, the duality of life on earth is vital for the growth of the divine. We are born here on earth to live the duality because the dual nature of our perception helps God grow. God, through us, is growing, and our job is to do our part in the evolution of the universe.
See, I don't know.
I don't
I don't
think
resonate with
so.
that. And
I
I've
don't
heard that
resonate
many
with.
times. I've heard that through, so many
Yes.
different, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like if that makes sense to you, then I can, it's fine. But I don't understand that. I don't know why God would
Mm,
need
I
to.
don't think God, I personally, I don't think God would. I mean, I can much more easily co-sign the idea of God seeking to experience itself through its many iterations of life or incarnation or throughout the dimensions and the universes. God is experiencing, God is dancing, God is playing. That like feels a little better to me.
Mm-hmm.
But God growing, that means that God is currently existing in a somewhat limited state.
Capacity.
Right.
I
But
mean, what is
maybe,
God, like AI? Like God is AI,
maybe.
and God knows what God knows and is the smartest one here, but it can still become more than it already was. I just don't. I mean, I don't know. For me, the idea, and again, who is the creator, right? So is it because some people argue that aliens are the creators of the human race, and yet who created the aliens, and who created that, and who created that, right? So eventually, you get back to some force
Mm-hmm.
that is the origin of all things, no matter how many multiverses that there are. And that one thing, how does it need to be more if it was the original? You see? So
Mm-hmm.
so that part I struggled with. I don't really resonate with that.
And how does A Course in Miracles frame it?
A Course in Miracles doesn't get, A Course in Miracles is a brilliant book because it accepts that there are questions for which there will not be answers. And I think that it basically says to you, if you think that you're going to figure this out with your human mind, good luck. So it starts from the position that God is everything and the world is illusion, and God did not create the world.
Mm-hmm.
We created the world. And then that brings to me, because I saw on YouTube a prompt that said, Archangel, how did Lucifer become fallen? And it's always an interesting question because if you create something perfect, how does this perfect thing become imperfect? Super imperfect. How did human beings that were created as God's children become imperfect? And so in Course in Miracles, they say, well, it was that for a second, the tiny mad idea of what would it be like to create without God crept into our mind. And then that created such a fearful response that we even dared to think it, that we created the Big Bang, which created the entire physical universe as a place to escape from God. Sort of like when Adam and Eve put on the leaves and we're like, everything's fine, God, everything's okay, we don't know anything, right? So I think that that makes more sense to me, that this is
Mm-hmm.
because that's why no matter how good it gets, it always decays,
Mm-hmm.
because it's someone that's not creating with God but has creative power that
Mm-hmm.
we do, so we can create, but it all falls apart. It's not lasting, it's not eternal, because it's not in alignment with God. And all God wants is for us to remember and know that he's not going to judge us, and that we are safe to come back. And all we have to do is wake up and let the Holy Spirit guide you. And you do that through forgiveness, forgiving yourself and forgiving everybody else.
So are we the fallen angels or the product of, are we?
Definitely some sort of little fallen angels, for sure. I mean,
Okay.
definitely the terrible child that ran off, but God doesn't even know that we're here. God is eternal, and the only one that really knows we're here. So when that idea came in and we created this world,
Mm-hmm.
it says God created the Holy Spirit and put it into this little matrix insanity. But God doesn't wake us up because he doesn't want to freak us out, because if God really came shining blasting light like God is, imagine the horror especially when you know or think that you've done something so wrong. So he sends the Holy Spirit and Jesus to talk to us and like guide us out of the darkness one step at a time until you can awaken and realize that you never left God because you're always in the mind of God.
And so it's not that we fell and left. We're still
No.
there. We're
Oh,
just,
we're there
but a part of us is trapped in this illusion,
in a bad dream.
in a bad dream. There are so many ideas.
I know. And which one's right? I don't know.
Maybe it doesn't really matter.
I guess.
Maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know. Let me see. Anything else in this chapter? Again, effortless attraction.
Yeah, I think we've talked about
We are
this so
always creating. And if what you are creating is not to your current liking, you have nobody to blame but yourself, not to make you feel bad.
Hard.
Right. But that's because you're attracting according to
What
your.
is that thing that the grandmas used to give you when you were bad and it would tasted horrible and they would take, that's the medicine that you get for, when you would have a bad bellyache. Was it cod liver oil? There was something, castor oil.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember my grandma, like when everybody would be like, that's why you have to take it because you shouldn't have eaten all that candy or whatever it was. And she would give us this castor oil. That's the medicine that you have to take, is what I'm pulling from this book. If your life doesn't look like you want it to, you need to stop being a victim.
Yeah.
Blaming anybody else. Check your vibration by doing these types of exercises that show you where are you still harboring darkness and limitation. And then consciously create an effort, disciplined, like you said, a disciplined, consistent effort that says, I don't want this anymore. I don't. I want something else. And I want it more than I want what I'm doing now. Because the pain is more than the pain of changing. And I'm going to do it no matter what. And that's when I think the process of really becoming free happens for people, when there's no more excuses.
Well, good stuff. The exercises for this chapter, we had to write a few paragraphs about what we would like to create in the following 6 areas of our life. She has us going through health, finances, career, relationships, spiritual connection, and lifestyle and living circumstances. I mean, I won't go through all of these because it's a whole paragraph, but it helped me to connect in a more specific way with these different areas and try to connect with a vision that I could create for that.
That's
because
nice.
For me, it's important to always have a vision, which is a destination, which is something, which is the outcome, identifying what that is for myself. And so I took some time to try and flesh that out, but I want to spend more time doing it in the future. This is a really helpful book in so far as it assists you in getting into connection to the things you actually really believe about yourself and everything else, and then helps to mobilize you in the areas to fix it. Like, how can I fix it? What can I do right now to change that? Create an affirmation that's the opposite of the thing that's going wrong in your life. Create the affirmation. Yeah.
And also really taking stock of your shadow. And I think a lot of us are really in denial, suppression even, of the things that are right underneath the surface. And you wonder why things can't change. But if you would just scrape like a little bit, like those scratch off tickets, for the lotto, like just scratch a little bit and it's right there. Like you did it right there. You saw it. I did it. I saw it right away. And so it's like, why do I pretend like that's not there? That's suffering, right? That's a suffering that's underneath that. It's affecting mind. It's affecting body. It's affecting spirit. It's affecting your relationship to others. All of it.
We do it because of those neural pathways, right?
Exactly.
It's the habit of it all.
And even when you have it all, even if you do, like I do hypnotherapy on myself, I make recordings and stuff, but life happens. You get triggered. And when you get triggered with situations or events that happen, whether it's feeling unwell, whether it's somebody does something to you or something falls through that you really wanted, it just throws you into that loop so fast that sometimes it's very hard to be like, how do I press, just pause before I go down the chutes and ladders, activation sequence. So it made me very humble. I really enjoyed these exercises. It made me really think like, wow, this is a really good way to look at and evaluate, where am I? Where do I want to go? what do I want to address? And for me, it's definitely mindset, like limiting beliefs
Yes.
and really
Yes.
catching those things that you say
Yeah.
as Bible
Yeah, as
when they're not.
your default messaging system, your id,
Exactly.
ego, and super ego, that voice
Exactly.
inside of you. I think if you are new to spirituality, or if you're maybe branching out from something like organized religion
Hmm.
and you want to explore a spiritual connection, I think this book would be a great place to
Agreed.
start, just to get these fundamental concepts, which again, the Kabbalion covers, but it's so
Dense.
much. It's
Yeah.
so much that I would
Yeah.
never point somebody to that book to begin with. But this is a great primer for spiritual development. And even if you are an established practitioner or somebody who's interested in spirituality, you've read a lot of books, this is a great reminder. This is a great refresher of everything we know is true, but we often force ourselves into amnesia and we get caught up in
Yes.
reaction and we start suffering again. Like, we need to
Hmm.
read a book like
Yeah.
this.
When you find that your life is showing you something you don't
Yeah.
want, immediately grab this book,
Yep. It'll
go
tell
to
you why.
chapters 1, 2, 3, and do the work, and you'll know
Yes.
exactly what the problem is.
Yes. I was thinking today as I was out in my yard with my dog, he was playing in my sprinkler. It was so beautiful. I was just like, oh, this is life. I love it. I was
Yeah.
thinking about you and me, and I was thinking about this podcast. And then I was thinking about Karen Curry Parker. And I'm like, I wonder if she'd ever come on the pod.
I think she might. I actually need to really reach out to her because I was supposed to do that last week, but then I didn't feel well. So this week it's happening.
Maybe you could ask. I don't know.
I think
I
she might.
I don't
She's
know.
lovely.
Is she? Would you be
Oh, she's the
starstruck?
sweetest, nicest person in the
I
world.
wouldn't be
She really is.
starstruck though. And I've done so many interviews that I'm
Oh,
just
at this
like,
point, you're,
but I would
you're
love to
like,
just pick her brain. And
who
I
would you
just
be
think
starstruck by if you did get to interview somebody? Who would like really?
Wayne Dyer, if he were still alive.
Okay, okay,
David Icke, probably. David, do you know who
okay.
David Icke
I
is?
don't.
Girl.
Hmm.
um, we could talk later. Probably not many people. I feel like I can sit down and have a conversation. I recently interviewed someone who has a podcast that I listen to every single night. Like, as I'm falling asleep, I'll listen to one of his episodes, and I really love his perspective. He's had a Kundalini awakening, and I love his story around that. And I invited him onto my podcast, just thinking he would say no, of course, and he said yes.
Oh,
And I interviewed him, and he was so wonderful. We ended up talking
wow.
for like 2 hours afterwards, and I'm like, oh my God, everybody's just a person.
It is. It's true.
Everybody's just a people
It's
like
true.
me. Yeah.
It's true.
Who would you be starstruck by?
It's a hard one. Because a lot of the people that would starstruck by died. Like, they're like people that lived in the past. But starstruck.
Maybe intimidated by.
I mean, I'd probably be intimidated to interview Oprah because she's such an amazing interviewer. And I'm sure people have asked her every question under the sun. And I would struggle to find what questions could I ask Oprah where this could be actually interesting for her to do this interview. So that would be one. Wait, what's Ryan Gosling? Because I just had a crush on him since I was like 11. I don't even know. Whenever Ryan Gosling started, my friend and I we bought each other Ryan Gosling coasters, Ryan Gosling like teapot. Like, I'd be like,
oh my
Ryan
gosh,
Gosling, can I look at you? Just
he
talk,
married
Ryan
he married a nice, beautiful Latina
She's
as well.
the most beautiful. So I felt better because at least he went Latin.
Yes.
I feel like that was a little win for me. Like a
Did
little
you
win.
see him in the movie Drive?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Like, I'm getting shallow here, but that's just reality. Reality is that I would be starstruck if I saw Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, no, he seems like
with
a
his
nice person.
eyes.
Yeah,
You know how
God,
he looks.
yeah. He seems like a small person though, like a slight man.
Well, that's good because I'm 5'3", so
that's true. I'm 5'9", so.
Ooh.
Well, you know that I met you.
I didn't really. I thought you were like 5'7". I didn't know you were 5'9".
I'm 5'9", yeah.
Everybody looks tall to me, Crystal.
Well, when you're down there.
Yeah.
My husband would call you a hobbit because he's 6'3".
Okay. Nice.
My husband adores you. He thinks you're the best.
I love him too. It's mutual.
So this has been great, everybody. We're going to continue to move through Inside the Body of God by Karen Curry Parker. If you haven't gotten the book, you can still get it. Catch up. I think it's a pretty easy read. It's also it's a good book. And also, I didn't mention at the beginning, we have a Facebook group. It's called Miraculous Thinking. Link in the description. Come and join us. We also have a YouTube. You might be watching us here. Have you subscribed? Are you liking? Are
Press
you
the bell.
commenting? Are you
Just press the
sharing?
bell.
We are,
Call to action.
I think we grew by 2 new subscribers
Ooh,
last month.
okay.
So hi, 2 new
Hello
subscribers, whoever you
and
are.
welcome.
I just feel like these conversations and these books are so amazing. I'm like,
They are.
you better subscribe. Better stay
And
with
if
us.
you watch us and you like it, share it. Share with some friends that you
Yeah.
think would enjoy it if you feel called to. I invite you to share it because I have
Yeah.
to because I'm a projector and I can't tell people what to do. I
But
invite you to share our podcast.
absolutely. I just think more people need to be reading these books and talking about it.
I agree.
Are there any other thoughts that we have for these beautiful folks out here?
Nope. Just make sure that if you're doing the exercises, please share it with us. It would be so fun for us to know, what areas did you identify for yourself? And maybe potentially if we have common areas, all of us, we can create something around those to support
Oh, that'd be
you and
wonderful.
us, right?
Oh, I love that. What a good idea.
There you go.
All right, everybody. We will be, oh, we didn't mention, we had
What?
talked about mentioning that we haven't really been consistent on the release dates of these podcasts lately because we just haven't been feeling well, to be quite honest
Yeah.
with you. We've
Hmm.
been having procedures and I was sick. My voice is not back. And so we kind of just record when we're physically able to. We're trying to do it
Yes.
every single week. Our goal is to get back to every Wednesday releasing an episode, and we will get there. But like for right now, we're just kind of in a season
Yeah.
of figuring it out.
We're going with the flow.
Yeah. So if we're a little late, we apologize, but we'll get her as soon as we can.
Yes.
All right, everybody, have a beautiful rest of your day. Love you. Bye
Bye.
bye.